Olá, bom dia a todos. Obrigado pela presença nesse nosso bate-papo. Hoje a gente tem mais um bate-papo da Câmara de Comércio Brasil-Israel, hoje em parceria com a Federação de Israel das Câmaras de Comércio, onde a gente tem a presença da Sarit Fishban, representante da Federação, e uma convidada muito especial, Devora Mason, que ela é diretora, sócia da JVP, que é um dos maiores fundos de Venture Capital de Israel, que é a Jerusalém Venture Partners, e que a gente tem muito prazer de ouvi-la num momento muito importante de Israel, muito importante dos negócios de tecnologia, e a ideia aqui é trazer um overview da opinião da Devora, que tem muita experiência nisso, e, por outro lado, ver um pouco de perspectivas em relação até oportunidades de negócio. Então, nós vamos dividir a nossa conversa basicamente entre a apresentação de Devora, depois a gente abre para perguntas para quem quiser, que pode lançar no chat, e se de preferência já fazer a pergunta em inglês, se mandar em português também não tem problema, a gente faz a tradução e pergunta para a Devora. Nós temos também a presença do Márcio Levenstein, que é nosso diretor da Câmara de Comércio. Temos muito prazer dele estar conosco também. Devora, Sarit, thank you very much for joining this conversation. And I gave the major picture of you, both of you, for the people in Brazil. And the idea here is to listen to Devora, and after that, we will have a question open for the public, and this is the idea. Sarit Fishban, thank you very much for support and join us also in this conversation, and in the name of Chamber of Commerce. So, Devora, I made the introduction and your experience about VC and investment in tech companies, and we would like to know, how do you feel, how do you are facing this sensitive moment in Israel, and the opportunities also in this time. Please, thank you, Devora.
Thank you, Renato. I think, what's really amazing is also to be in a forum like this with people who are interested in hearing about Israel. Having this open dialogue, this open conversation right away is a good start. So, I met Renato, for all of those of you who are interested in hearing, over last year before October 7th, which seems like an eternity ago, a different lifetime. And he came together with a delegation to JVP from BTG Pactual that joined us at JVP to hear and to meet with some of the top VCs in Israel. And we continue to be in touch because Renato comes to New York often, where we have an office, and of course is very supportive and interested in what's happening in Israel, and is a good friend. So, when he asked me if I would want to speak about the topic I love talking about, which is Israel, investing in Israel, I love that topic even more. So how could I say no? And so thank you for having me here, Renato. I'd just like to share my screen. Do you want to do that now? I think it needs to be shared on your side. Let me know when you can see it. Can you see my screen? There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start off by talking a little bit about the Israeli high-tech investment landscape, which has undergone some significant shifts from being a vibrant fundraising hub to essentially changing a little bit over the last year and finishing off 2023 with a little bit of a slower year of fundraising than what we had before. I'll talk to you a little bit about Israel, about myself, some of the challenges we're facing, the economic overview, key sectors for investment, some of the successful investments that have happened, some opportunities. I'll talk to you a little bit about JVP, where I work, and what we are doing. And of course, I can't help but finish off by just talking about what it means to be on the right side of history. As you all know, they say that the technology in Israel is like a triple espresso. You know, Israeli high-tech, Israeli innovation started years ago. Many times a country that needs to survive, that needs to support itself, found unique, innovative ways to be able to do so. And the innovation has become one of the main platforms of which the Israeli economy is built, and is one of the largest exports today. Just to introduce myself quickly, my name is Devora Mason. I live and breathe Israeli tech. I've been working in the tech market for almost 15 years. I've had the privilege and the opportunity to take a substantial role in many groundbreaking projects and companies across the years, including I was the founding director of an innovation lab together with the Jerusalem municipality a few years ago in the fields of AR and VR technology. And of course, my greatest fans in my fan club are my 5 amazing children. Currently, I have the role of Senior Director of Investor Relations at JVP. And I've worked in many other fields in Israel: assistive technology, SaaS, ed tech. I've worked in AR, VR, visual technology, AI, IoT, smart mobility, and many others. As we all know, Israel faced some really, really difficult challenges in 2023, finishing off the year with, from going straight from political protests into the, of the proposed judicial reform and going right into the war of October 7th, and all of the security and the, and the basis of Israel seems to have been put under threat. That's what it appears to be, to people in the outside world, of course. And, that's the situation today. But Israel has always been a country where we see that through opportunities, through crisis comes opportunity. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that right now. So one of the companies that does reports every single year, they came out with a report recently to talk a little bit about what remains, why they're positive about what's going to be in Israel in the coming year, in 2024. So if we look at, let's say, the cybersecurity sector, remains strong, very strong throughout the entire year, even ending up the year. Of course, the emergence of generative AI has opened up new opportunities, have drawn in new investors as well. But in general, VC investments have suffered a notable decline in 2023. Israeli venture capitalists adopted a strategic and selective stance, that they direct their funds, and they've started to direct their funds mostly towards supporting their existing portfolio companies and with the highest potential for success. And despite the challenging environment, we've also seen that many of the companies, despite the slump, are somewhat matching those previous numbers of 2018 to 2020, which kind of poses this question for us of whether or not the 2021 and 22 numbers were really realistic at all. The slump that we've seen, let's say, in valuations in Israel, this decline has also been seen across the world. It hasn't been specific to Israel. And many of this, has been playing a part across the ecosystem. We do see that the Israeli ecosystem, the Israeli government is still committed to tech. And it's just a question, of course, of where they're going to do that, how they're going to help their companies to succeed, especially when we've seen foreign investors showing interest in companies setting up Delaware startups, registering the Delaware startups, so that they'll be able to be domiciled where the fund that's investing is located. And we don't want to encourage that. We want these companies to remain Israeli companies. Now, despite this fundraising slowdown, we've also seen that Israeli funds are still sitting on a substantial $10 billion of capital, with $2.38 billion earmarked for new investments and $7.7 billion reserved for existing portfolio companies. As we can see as well, and I just want to show you this quickly because, I have a cousin who works in New York, an investment company, and he shared this with me yesterday, so I had to add it in. As you can see from the GDP of Israel, the US GDP goes up annually every year, and the Canadian GDP goes up as well, a little bit below, but in parallel. And the Israeli GDP was always quite below that. If you look now, you can see that as of 2022 and close to 23, the Canadian GDP is not growing any faster than the Israeli GDP, meaning we're looking at two countries that are very much connected to the United States. They're actually growing almost substantially at the same rate. Very interesting to note. Now, despite the fundraising slowdown, we did see quite a few. We saw the start of 2024 rebounding with close to $1 billion of capital raised in Q1 of 2024. And so that's already a good start. We're already seeing something good happening there in that regard, because we're essentially noticing that there's a rebound and there's a return interest into investing in capital in Israel. There are some top sectors, of course, that we're interested in investing in, and that we continue to invest in Israel, as we well know. The leading technology clusters. So let's just look at these numbers. For example, we'll look at, let's say, the largest one, the number of new Israeli high-tech companies in 2023 in cyber was, let's say, 41 was the highest one. If we look at, let's say, fintech, 37 new companies, that's close after cyber. 36 companies in deep tech opened in 2023. Then we have deep tech, another 15. We have IoT, another 16, 11 in automotive, and 4 in digital health. So we're looking at quite a few new companies in the core themes of Israel opening in 2023. And that's always a good sign. The question, of course, will always be, will they have the capital to continue to grow? And will they have the team? Now, as you all know, the Israeli tech market is not the go-to market of the companies themselves. The companies may do their R&D initially in Israel. They may create their POC initially in Israel. They may have their R&D team sitting here. They may have gotten some of their initial capital from Israel. But Israel is too small a country for their go-to market to be Israel. Their go-to market is mostly Europe and North America and Asia and other big countries that are using their technology to help them to distribute, grow, and scale. So if we look at the drop, of course, we can, feel that these numbers were substantial. I mean, we're talking about a 66% fall in the number of funds, a a 74% drop in capital volume, but we also have to look at the largest companies, largest VCs that are still standing in Israel. And as I mentioned before, the money that was raised until 2023, we still are holding a large amount of capital in the country, but many of the distributions today, a lot of the allocations from the funds that are dry powder today will be going to follow-on investments. And we need to look and see where are the new companies that started, let's say, as I mentioned to you, 2023, certain number of cyber, certain number of IoT, where are they going to be getting their investments from? As you can see in 2023 as well, there were some very large companies specifically who you can see they did what we're not looking at seed rounds. We're looking at much later stage rounds where they are mostly being followed on by investors who had invested in them previously. And many of them have received investments in 2023. So they're continuing to grow. And, they're going to continue to grow and scale. They're cash heavy. They have large amounts of capital. And most likely they won't need more capital until they reach their IPO or M&A along that route, or until they reach a break-even point for the company. Israeli funds are still sitting on $10 billion of dry capital and of dry powder of capital. But if we look at it, we see that only 2.38 of that 10 billion is going to be earmarked for new investments, whereas about 7.5 billion will be reserved for their existing portfolio companies. And you can really see that here. When you look at the types of investments that they made, you can see that they really were looking at follow-on rounds. If we take a look at, let's say, some of JVP's companies, JVP has a multi-strategy approach where we invest early, we invest often, and we keep on investing until the companies reach IPO or M&A. And these companies, we feel that will reach the category leadership in their field, in their industry, in their technological theme. We keep investing in them until they reach that point of break even or IPO or M&A, of course. And so many of these companies, as I mentioned before, the capital that we have available will mostly go to helping these companies achieve that leadership role. Should I pause for a second for questions, or should I keep going? All right, I'll keep going. So as you can see here, when I talked briefly about the top 24 companies, the top 24 VCs, you can see here what they mean by top VCs is that the top VCs are holding the most capital. They have the largest AUM out of all the other VCs. And they are, of course, managing capital that's much larger. You can see JVP is up there with 1.876 of assets under management, and they're essentially going to continue to stand strong and try to raise their next fund. What's very interesting is that in order to support the ecosystem, we're not only looking to people to come and invest in the market, but the government themselves have to also play an integral part in investing in order to ensure that the startups that they've already invested in are continuing to grow and scale even during difficult times. So if we look at, let's say, the Israeli tech sector, where there was a global downturn, there were adverse impacts because of the political unrest and an ongoing war. And recognizing these challenges is the first step. The next step, the Israel Innovation Authority recently introduced a stimulus package, which includes a venture capital fund and a fund of funds. And this active governmental support will be important to help guide the tech sector through the stages, through the difficulties, and to spirit a new era of growth and innovation. Obviously, we want the government to take even bigger steps to incentivize Israeli founders to register their ventures here in Israel. But we obviously all we can do, leaders, of course, of big funds and of big companies, is push. The first fund is called the New Startup Fund, which will invest in startups in pre-seed, seed, and Series A. So as you can see, earlier stage companies, which is where the funding opportunities are sorely lacking. And then starting in Q2 of 2024, there'll be a new Yozma 2.0 fund, which will have about $160 million of government money, in addition to a few $100 million of Israeli institutional investors' money. And from there, the Israeli high-tech companies, every dollar of Israeli institutional investment into a fund, an additional 30 cents of government money will be added. So that the government's money will be 23% of the total investment by institutions. And this will be launched in Q2. Now, of course, we understand, I'm just going to stay here for a second, that with the troubled landscape, the Israeli tech sector has always demonstrated resilience. We believe in the sector, we believe in it, and we believe that they'll continue to deliver on time. As I mentioned to you, a large part of the teams, a large part of the growth of the companies is not necessarily in Israel, even if they started here. There have been challenges with Israeli military reserves, sea levels and above being called up to reserves. And, I personally have gone to visit the South and to visit the soldiers there a few times since the start of the war, to do a barbecue for them, to show our support, and to also witness some of what had happened in the South. And I have to say that I was very surprised to find some founders who had just started a startup in 2022 who were basically in reserves for many days and had given up on their company. And I think that that's important to keep in mind, that, there is going to be challenges across the way. There is going to be a decrease in the companies who are going to be going out there and raising a Series A round if their leaders are in the reserves. But the government has also recognized that and have limited the amount of time that people are in the reserves in order to ensure that they can go back and manage their businesses. Is it perfect? Not necessarily, but they're doing the best they can to make sure that they also protect the security of the country while at the same time protecting the security of the economy, which I think is essentially two trains running in parallel that need to constantly stay at the same speed in order for us to see the success that we're used to seeing. I want to also just reference for a second the downturn, in the fundraising of 2023, and also, and just to address that for a second, because, we've noticed, for example, that there's been similar investments in 2023 for first investments, meaning the amounts allocated, seem to be similar to the investments made in 2015. So at a first glance, that would look on par. We would say, wow, these companies receiving first investments seems to be like they're receiving similar investments to 2015. Unfortunately, as IVC had done the research and looked on, if we take those 2015 numbers as a reference, the median amounts for VC-backed early rounds, that dollar raised by an Israeli fund can do much less than a similar dollar in 2015. So we're really looking at different amounts if we're going to take a look at that. Let me just talk a little bit about JVP, which is the fund I work for, and that I am the Senior Director of Investor Relations there. About 3 years ago, I joined the fund. It was very interesting for me to go from the world of innovation, working with the companies, with the governments, with the municipalities, working with as a consultant also for corporates, helping them to tech scout, helping them to do POCs of technology in their companies, meeting with the chief innovation officer, helping them to understand what their challenges were, and bringing the right Israeli technology to the forefront of their awareness and of their next steps of development. And that's, that was something that I did for many years. So when I joined JVP, I all of a sudden was at the same table, but with a different view. I was sitting at the different end of the table, looking out towards the ecosystem of innovation, seeing it from a different point of view. And one of the things that made me interested in moving seats at the table was that the founder of JVP, Aurel Margalit, who I had known for many years and had been very supportive of projects I had built and grown, he had a similar mission and vision to what I had always felt very connected to. And I right away connected to that. Aurel Margalit sees innovation as the focal point of what will change the world, the region, and will change the country and will change the world. If we look at innovation as just a small part of what we're doing in the world, or what we're doing in a region, we might miss the point of understanding that the innovation is what builds the region. It's what makes the difference. It's the resilience of the region, of a country, that's based on innovation. And I remember speaking to the groups from different regions that have come to visit us, where their goal really was to understand, how do we bring innovation to the forefront of our cities, of our countries? How do we grow and scale companies so that they become the next industry leaders, industry category leaders? And that was really something that Aurel has done for many years. JVP was a fund that was founded 30 years ago in Jerusalem, one of the first VC funds out of Israel, with some of the top IPOs and M&As to date. We're one of the biggest cyber investors in Israel as well. And we're the top 6 consistently performing VC on Preqin. We have a very, very focused strategic growth strategy. We have it based on 5 pillars. Number 1, partnerships with universities for commercialization, partnerships with corporates and strategic partners, international strategic partners, for helping with POC and as well as for investment. We also believe in the early and later stage investment strategy. So as I mentioned, invest early, invest often. We also look at the thematic centers of excellence that we create across the country, which are essentially impact investment arms to help the growth of a specific theme in a region that's specific to a region, helping those centers to grow and support the ecosystem, house them in a way that will also help them to be a part of it. Of course, creating a nonprofit accelerator to support the earlier stage companies, essentially creating our own proprietary deal flow, so that when the companies become mature enough to be able to grow and scale into the global market, we then can take them to our scale-up center in New York, which we created as a center of excellence for our growth stage companies, giving them a foothold into the US market and helping them to get their first location, their first placement there in the US market, and to help them to grow and scale together with partnerships, of course, government, universities. We opened the center in 2019 together with our partnerships with the New York City DC and Columbia CUNY. And of course, 8 companies have now become close to 40. And we will actually be holding our annual meeting in New York on May 2nd, and where we will also be hosting many of our potential investors, our current LPs, our portfolio companies. So if anyone will be in New York in that time, feel free to let Renato or myself know. I'd be happy to host you there and to show you a little bit more. As I mentioned to you before, we have an early and later stage strategy. Invest early, invest often. That way we also hold high stakes in the companies that we work with. Our teams work very closely with the companies. We don't just invest and walk away. We invest and we help them to grow and scale. We're extremely involved in their growth. And I think that also makes a difference between investments that we leave to chance and investments that succeed. If you look at JVP's track record, you can understand that the growth itself didn't just happen because of the early stage investments. It happened because of the ongoing support and structure that we gave them. I wanted to just go back for a second to the companies that I showed you before, the JVP companies, just to give you a sense of some of the themes that we're investing in. Earnix, for example, is the next generation real-time dynamic operating system for the insurance industry, which allows large insurance companies to enter the new world of dynamic real-time pricing, rating, claims, and usage-based insurance. Earnix has now grown and scaled to the point where many of their customers are some of the largest insurance companies across the globe. If we look at ControlUp, they're the market leader in digital employee experience. They offer an innovative self-healing platform that enables IT professionals to manage their employee systems performance efficiently, remotely, and autonomously. And this is something that has really changed. Was also, the company really took off during COVID, especially during a time when many of the employees are working from home, and they're expected to work, and we, not just home, the work from everywhere era changed the face of that, of the company, and of course helped it to grow and scale, and it's continuing to do so. If we look at a company like Achilles, they're the only zero trust secret management as a service company. The company secures your cryptographic assets. So once again, we're looking at a lot of companies that are based on security, based on IT, based on SaaS, based on cyber, insurtech, fintech, companies that are out there making sure that people can use the technologies that they want as securely and safely as possible. I'll just give one more summary quickly. Coro was a security solution in a box for small to medium-sized enterprises, companies today. In order for them to have the security in their workspace that they would need, from endpoint, to identity, from cloud to email security and all of that, they would need to hire many people and spend a lot of money, which many of the SMEs cannot afford. Coro is constantly growing, not just meeting, surpassing their quarterly goals, and we just see them as being one of the top companies in cyber to date. I just want to talk a little bit more about. I'm actually just going to move on to a next step about the situation in Israel. So if anybody had any questions as well about some of the technology and investments that I gave, I'd be happy to answer. I just would need you to ask a question.
Devora, sorry to interrupt you. Can we make a break for questions now, please?
Exactly. That's what I was just saying.
Okay, let's do it. So can you, we can, please, we can take out the screen for a while. And
sure. Renata, you want to just take the screen down for a second? Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Devora, thank you very much. Very, very interesting. And but we have a few questions already, and I'm worried about the time we have. Okay. And Sarit, I would like just to say hello for people, because you are sharing this event with us, and it's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you, Renato, and thank you, Devora, for your presentation. That was intriguing and very, very knowledgeable. I would just like to say hi on behalf of the Federation of Israeli Chamber of Commerce. We're very happy to be here and co-host this event with BRIL Chamber. And this is just the opening to a series of events where we'll have chamber members of ours speaking about Israeli technologies, about innovation, and about very unique products from the Israeli ecosystem. We are very excited to share these sessions with you and looking forward. Thank you, Renato, and Renata for the wonderful organization of this event. Well done, and kudos to everyone here. And of course, we here in the Federation of Israeli Chamber of Commerce are always at your service and at your dispute to answer any questions regarding the Israeli ecosystem and the Israeli exporters and importers. Please feel free to reach out.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarit. Well, Marcio, please, I know that you have a question, and we have a few other questions in our chat. So please, Marcio.
Hi. So Devora, I'd like to know a little bit more about one of the 6 areas that the technology companies are investing, which is climate tech. I think that this is something that Brazil has potential, a very important potential, given all the territory that we have of forests and different, how can I say, environmental areas with different specifics. So I'd like you to run through a little bit about what are you seeing on climate tech investments in Israel that can be used worldwide and obviously also in Brazil.
Sure, I appreciate that question. Thank you. So I would like to note that Israel has been extremely focused on climate initiatives. There was supposed to be a large climate event in Israel in October of 2023 that was later postponed. And we've seen, that there's been a lot of interest in climate tech, companies growing and scaling. And I have to say, and I'm going to focus for a second on the specialty that I know more than the others. When we think of climate tech, we oftentimes think of energy companies, we think of electric cars, we think of alternative energy. As JVP being one of the leaders in fintech and insurtech, we've started to notice the trend around climate, this intersection between climate and insurtech. And what does that mean? There's a lot of events that are happening around climate events in the world that are affecting the pricing rate and rating in real time of insurance companies. And insurance companies are not sure how to respond to that. Many of our insurtech companies have started to work closely on finding solutions to how we would work to solve the problems of climate across the board in the insurtech world, as well as in banking. Many of the carbon platforms, carbon rating, carbon collecting platforms, that credit platforms, they're oftentimes based on the technologies that are also representative of the banking industry. So the question is, how do we rate these carbon credits? How do we count them? How do we store them? How do we use them? How do we trade them? A lot of that is coming across in the fintech technologies that are out there. So for example, we'll be launching Fund 11 in the coming month with a large focus on climate tech, because our core themes of cyber, protecting infrastructure so that they're not hacked, or that we don't have climate events around type terrorist activities that can create huge climate events. We're looking at, for example, InsurTech. IAG, one of the largest Israeli insurance companies, partners with us to explore climate tech solutions based in the insurance industry. We're fintech banks as well, interested in being at the table to understand how the carbon credits and how the process of trading and collecting and monitoring will be done. And a lot of that will be happening as well at our annual meeting on May 2nd, where we're bringing together some of the largest insurtech companies in the world to sit at the table and discuss the world of climate and how it intersects with the deep technologies that Israel leads in.
Okay.
At the same time, there's many funds out there that are looking at climate tech from the energy perspective as well. Super interesting. Innovation Authority as well. Super interesting. And I'm totally behind that.
Okay, thank you.
We have a few other questions. One is from our director, Juliana Kreiser. What strategy can investors employ to manage and potentially recover from investments in companies that have not succeeded as initially anticipated?
I think most investors have a 10-year fund strategy up till today. Today people have a 10-year fund strategy so that if usually the expectation was that within 10 years there would be an IPO, an M&A, some sort of a liquidity event, and then they would reinvest that liquidity based on their current strategy. Owing to the lack of IPOs and liquidity events that have been happening in the last 2 years, investors have started to look and say, how do we deal with this? Because we want to still maintain the same strategy we had before, whatever percentages they're putting into fixed assets, into alternatives and so on. But we don't necessarily, within that structure that we built, we don't have liquidity to do so. I do think we're much smarter today to understand that for instance, startups, they're not 10-year fund. They're not based on a 10-year strategy anymore. Even though most funds are early stage funds are 10-year funds, at the end of the day, we see that most companies, in order for you to have a fund returner, will need more than 10 years to do so. If you're investing in a VC fund, you'll have to sit tight and watch that happen. Many of the companies that have seen the downturn, and we see different vintages from across different funds. So depending on what vintage they've been invested in, I could see that there may be some companies that have had a downturn. Once again, by also combining your early and late growth stage strategy, you're also investing in companies that are more mature and that are also going to grow and scale in the market. So our growth stage companies have been only minimally, if at all, affected by the downturn in the market, the political situation, and so on, because that they're not relying on one industry or one global location for them to grow and scale. And I think that it's important to keep that in mind.
Okay, Devora, thank you very much. As we don't have many time to talk, but I have a question. It's more your feeling, your comment about, we know that the chamber is not involving political issues, just business. And that's why we have this select audience that they are looking for invest in Israel. And I would like to have from you a comment. Basically, we know that when you have a crisis, part of the people cry and a part sells tissue. Okay, so in this sense, what in your feeling and your experience after October 7th, what kind of technology comes now? Because maybe in army, maybe in security, because when we have a crisis, new technology come in all areas. And your feeling, what is the sector that is going booming this moment from now on after October 7th, and also talk about valuation at this time of the companies.
Okay. I'm extremely optimistic, which might be a good thing or a bad thing. But I'm extremely optimistic about many things. Firstly, as an innovative country, Israel will always be the ones to sell you tissues, as you called it. It's a nice saying. I'm going to use that, Renato. Israel has been at the forefront of innovation for many years and continues to do so. When there's a need, right away, the country breeds innovation. I've met with young professionals in different countries around the world, and I've asked them, have you ever, in high school, university, postgrad, graduate school, have you ever taken a course in innovation? Never. Never have they ever been exposed to innovation. And this, to me, is completely different across the board in Israel. From when they enter the army, from throughout the years of university, there's going to always be exposure to innovation. And we always look at the next step of how to solve the problem. And whether it's more homeland security, whether it's more cyber, whether it's developing solutions for many of the problems that will come up, we've already started to research and understand where the problems were that created the security breach into Israel on October 7th. And believe me, once they come out with the report, there will be 10 startups for every single problem that will come and propose solutions so that it will never happen again. So I think that that's really important. What I will say about valuations, do you want to invest when the valuations are so high? People, for some reason, I grew up with a father who was an economist who trades futures. And I'd say to him, what's the secret to investing? And he'd say to me, buy low, sell high. I would say, well, that's obvious. That's obvious. But it's not. People get hyped. And we saw that in 21 and 22. The valuations were completely irrelevant to the realities of the companies. Today, the valuations, maybe a bit low, they actually are still great values for investment today than there are even in the US right now. The valuations are so spot on. There's such amazing opportunities to invest that if we look at the valuations and say there was a drop, true, that can be a little bit difficult when you've been invested. But at the same time, the opportunities are huge. And I'm excited to see what the next years will bring, especially looking at Q1 of 24, where already a lot of capital has started to come into the country again.
Perfect. And just to add this issue as give a picture of the employees now in the startups, because we know that part of them they went to the army, and how in Israel the companies could supersede so fast this situation. Very interesting to listen to you about that.
Well, I can speak about specific companies I've asked, some of them from day one, their US team kicked in and took over any roles that someone couldn't fill in. We've had founders that were located in the South. Some of them, even had team members that were part of the hostages. So obviously it's not a simple situation. In Israel, we're all only 1 degree of separation away from the next person. So we all know what's happening very closely. We're very connected. It's very difficult to know those things happening. But the workforce is such that we're also super supportive of each other. We've seen this more than ever since October 7th, where the country has become a country of social initiatives. Large people who are founders, who have made huge exits, people who are leaders in their communities, everyone is chipping in to help and ensure that the companies get the help they need. There have been initiatives. I mean, someone like Amnon Shashua, who was the founder of Mobileye, has opened up an initiative. And if we look for a second, I just want to mention 2 large corporates that are now investing more than ever in Israel. NVIDIA. And NVIDIA says that their pathway to success has been the Israeli market. They will not stop investing. And even now, they've been putting in more money into the Israeli market than ever. And Intel, which will be expanding their presence in Kiryat Gat, bringing in even more money. They're getting one of the biggest grants ever to happen in Israel. They're going to be bringing more jobs to the table. So I definitely see this as being a reflection of what's going to be in the future. When you see big corporates putting their money in at the table, you know that everyone should and will follow suit, or they'll miss out on the opportunity.
Very good. Well, our time is it's finished, and Devora, very interesting. What do you bring for us? Not only by the optimist side, but you could clarify many things for us with your vision from Israel to the world. So thank you very much. We'll have, I'm sure, other sessions to talk about that. And Sarit, thank you again. And we will keep in touch. Obrigado por todos que participaram, e vamos ter outros que vão ser divulgados pela Câmara Brasil-Israel. Muito obrigado. Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you.
Tchau, obrigado.
Thank you.